equipment. Why did we choose this as the first topic? Now, as we have covered in our previous segments, that there are different classes of equipment, which we call as class 1 to 5, where class 1, 2 and 3 are generally the electrical powered equipment, whereas class 4 and 5 are the engine powered or the IC engine powered forklifts. So when we talk about the ratio of electrical equipment getting bigger and bigger vis-a-vis the diesel, we are talking about class 1 to 3 versus class 4 and 5. And when we see a growth in class 2 and 3 as a big category in warehouse environment, we are definitely seeing an influx of more number of battery powered equipment getting into plants and warehouses. Okay. Just to give you a perspective on the numbers, how the numbers have moved. Now, this will give a very good perspective to all the audience that why are we talking about electrical or battery powered material handling equipment. If you look at the ratio, uh, electrical units have grown faster than the diesel trucks. I mean, they have grown at a CAGR of 8% vis-a-vis CAGR of 2% globally for diesel trucks and 5% in India. Whereas in India, as well as globally, the electrical MHEs have grown with a CAGR of 8%. And if you look at the pie, globally it is almost like 60 to 64% it has grown, and 36% is about diesel forklifts. And similar is the pattern in India. So this shows that there is a lot of high adoption of battery powered equipment. Now, when battery powered equipment are gaining prominence, it is important that we dwell a bit deeper on the heart of the equipment, which is the battery. Now, with that context, I would like to reach out to our first panelist, Mr. Mane, who I said is wearing two hats today, the manufacturer and the user. And I would like to ask him that what is the reason for this growth in electrical MHE? Why is this growing? And if I could add a couple of more questions and you could cover it at one go, is that what are the customer expectations from these MHEs? So that is customer point of view. And as a manufacturer, what are your expectations from the partners in battery and charger domain? If you could just share your thoughts on this, Mr. Mane.
Hi, good afternoon. Abhishek, thank you for the introduction and giving me an opportunity to talk to the customers and the attendees of this webinar and sharing knowledge about electrical forklifts. Now, the question what you asked is a very relevant, that why the electrical MH is gaining popularity. So there are many reasons. I will be not sharing all those, but there are main 5 reasons on which we will be focusing. Electrical equipments are having a high efficiency, which is leading to us saving energy, and cumulatively it will reduce your TCO, that is total cost of ownership. And it's a very important part from the terminology of owner of the company, that TCO is to be reduced. Then the electrical forklifts are having a very few components to maintain. So there is a very less maintenance, and this less maintenance will definitely have a high uptime, and it will give you a very high productivity in the production. Electrical forklifts are literally noiseless. There is no noise. So definitely the employees or the operators who are working will have a safety and efficiency improved. You can see that the productivity of the employees is increasing. Electrical equipments are cleaner environment. They are actually leading to a very good employee health, and definitely the efficiency of the worker. CO2 emission from the electrical forklift is as good as zero. So you will be having a reduced carbon footprint. So your company will benefit by a reduced carbon footprint. So these are a very 5 major advantages which are coming out from using electrical MHE. And for this reason, the electrical MHE is gaining popularity. Now, the another question what Abhishek asked is a very, again, relevant, that what are the expectations from electrical MHEs that is being asked by customers. So nowadays customers are asking to replace these diesel forklifts or IC engine forklifts by electrical forklifts. So what we need to have on the electrical forklift is definitely a suitable. It should be suitable for indoor and outdoor application. It should be rugged as like a diesel forklift. The electrical forklift should work for 2-shift operations without battery change. This is a really challenge for OEMs, that to build an electrical forklift with a suitable rating of a battery and a suitable charging procedure, so that you can operate the equipment in a 2-shift operation without battery change. The third one, again, this is not the only list, but there are many other expectations. These are the major expectations: capacity and throughput increase. This is again a requirement from the customers, that how you can increase the capacity of the equipment and throughput, turnout throughput, which is very again essential, and it is essentially connected with the battery rating and charging procedures. Life expectancy. On electrical forklifts, if you see, the life expectancy is really needed from the battery, because battery is the only item which is required to be replaced on a periodic basis after its end of life. So it is needed that battery life expectancy has to be increased. And how to manage all these things? To manage all those things, we have to have environmentally protected components. We have to have appropriate charging, appropriate battery and charger ratings, which will suffice your 2-shift operations. You have to use advanced technology, which is coming in these presentations, and I'm really interested to listen to that. What are the advanced technologies which are coming in to use on the electrical forklifts? And then we have to enhance feature and efficiency on the equipment. These are the things what we have to do. So to do all these things, there are certain challenges which are existing in the system on MHE. We have to ensure that battery, because battery is working as a counterbalance component on the equipment, so we need to maintain the battery weight. Battery weight of 1000 kg, I'm considering a lead acid battery. So lead acid battery of 1000 kg is working as a counterbalance on the equipment. If you are replacing the battery with some other technologies, then you have to manage that, how battery weight is compensated. Battery handling. This is another part where we have to have a very careful focus at how to handle batteries. The existing technology, lead acid battery, is required to be handled very carefully, because it is one, bulky, it is a big in size, and it is carrying acid and lead. So it is very important to have to handle batteries very carefully. Maintenance of the batteries. In the last webinar, we already gone through what maintenance are required for a lead acid battery, and that is required. Unless if you are not doing that, definitely you will be not getting the life of the battery which has been designed. So it is very important to maintain these batteries with a very careful manner, and you should conduct a very good practice of maintaining these batteries. Safety and hazard, as I told you, the batteries are carrying lead and acid, so it is very important, and it is very important to understand what hazard these batteries can create. So it is very important to manage these batteries safely. So to do all these things, what OEMs are doing? So from OEM perspective, what we are doing is that we are using contemporary technologies to improve performance of electrical drive systems, because whatever the demand is coming, or the customers are expecting from electrical forklift, we have to give through these contemporary technologies. Very major components in the electric drive system are charger, which is supplying the power to battery get charged. Once the battery is getting charged, it is supplying the power to controllers. There are 2 controllers in the system, traction controller and the hydraulic controller. Traction controller is responsible for the traction movement of the equipment, horizontal movement of the equipment, and the hydraulic motor is responsible for the vertical movement of the load. So all this is important on the electrical forklift, and what we are expecting as a OEM, that all components should complement as a package to fulfill challenges of electrical equipment that we have listed earlier. Now in this presentation, or in this panel board discussion, we will be only focusing on charger and battery. So what is there in the charger that is coming up, and what is new things, those are coming in the battery. So in charger, currently we are using conventional featured battery chargers. Then high frequency standard battery chargers we are using. There are certain chargers which are coming with the high frequency advanced feature. In batteries, there are advanced lead acid batteries, lithium ion batteries, supercapacitors, and fuel cells. All these are these technologies are upcoming technologies, and we are working on this to implement. And all the OEMs are working to implement this on the forklift. Today, we'll be talking only about battery and chargers. As Abhishek has also said that battery is the heart of electrical forklift. Yes, really it is the heart of electrical forklift because it is supplying energy to all the components, electrical components on the forklift. And if it is supplying an energy, then it is our responsibility that to keep it effective, we need to maintain its health and performance. So while maintaining its health and performance is very important to maintain these batteries and see that the how high life we can achieve high life expectancy from these batteries. Finally, how are we going to do this is that having a standard practices of maintaining these batteries and doing and using the advanced technologies in this battery and chargers.
So
Batteries
I think
in the forklift are yeah, Abhishek.
right. Yeah, I mean, you can complete because I had a follow-through question on this to Mr. Sarkar. You
Okay.
can just complete your part,
Okay.
Mr. Mani.
So batteries are the optimized energy packages which are supplying power, as I told earlier also, that it is supplying the power for traction, which is acceleration for accelerating and speed up the equipment in the horizontal direction, in the horizontal way. And also it is supplying the power to hydraulic motors for lifting the load with the specific lifting speeds. So all this is coming from the battery. The energy is coming from the battery, and the battery is getting all this energy from the chargers. And also I discussed about is working as a counterbalance weight on the equipment, because in the electrical not only in the electrical forklift but in the counterbalance forklift, it is required that the load on the forks are to be managed on the rear side of the forklift with the load on the rear side of the forklift, which is called as the counterbalance. And that counterbalancing is done by lot means by a battery of 1000 kg on the electrical forklifts. So that is the very important aspect of the battery on the electrical forklift in current scenario. If you are going to use any another technology, then we have to ensure that this battery weight has to be compensated by some dead weight on the equipment. So these are the requirements which are coming from the battery and charger on the MH.
So
Abhishek,
that's
it's all over.
yeah. So I think, Mr. Mane, you have given a very broad perspective of the expectations of a manufacturer as well as the user. Now that leads me to Mr. Sarkar, because as you have rightly put, battery is the heart of the equipment. So before we go further, Mr. Sarkar, we would just like to understand a bit deeper about batteries, like how are they classified, what are the different types of cells, and what are the different systems and processes that can be used to enhance the life and productivity of the battery. If you could throw some light on that, it will be a good connect to what the user and manufacturer expectations are all about.
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. I'll definitely do that in the following subsequent slides. It's an honor to be here. First, we must go through, I'll be only speaking about tubular batteries, tubular flooded batteries. So first, we'll be going through the application, the entire application gamut that a tubular flooded battery has. For first, they are used in standby powers. Then there is renewable energy and large-scale storage systems like wind power, solar power. Then something that is close to you guys, that is the forklift and the material handling systems. Then tubular batteries are used in industrial mobility, like for example, nowadays you see a lot of e-rickshaws going around, a lot of totos going around, then there are golf carts. Then there is backup power for both industrial application as well as home usages. So now let's dive deep into the motive power applications, which is the agenda for today's webinar. See, motive power applications today, they demand necessarily three very important characteristics. One is they should be able to perform a deep discharge somewhere in the range of maybe from 40% DOT to 80% DOT. Then they, particularly for India, they have to be able to operate at a high ambient temperature. Because you see in India, temperatures are close to 30 degrees centigrade, 35, somewhere 40 even. And when the batteries are in use, the temperatures can rise up to maybe 45, 50 degrees. So a traction battery must be able to, must be designed robustly enough to accommodate that temperature, operating temperature. And thirdly, which is one of the most important points, that the traction battery should be able to have a good enough rechargeability to be recharged faster. Now, a traction battery based on its application, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Yes. A traction battery based on its application is basically segmented into three different types. One is a light application battery, where you use it only for, say, a shift a day, and the DOT is never beyond 50%. Then there is normal application, where you use it for a shift, but the DOT can go as high as 80%. Then comes the heavy application, which is very much in use in today's industry. That is, a battery is used for a multi-shift operation, and it goes down to as far as 80% DOT. Now, the features on demand are a high cycle life. Even if the battery is used in a heavy application, the battery must be able to provide a very good cycle life. Second is the quick recharge. Like Mr. Mane had mentioned, that one of the challenges we are facing to have a battery which can go through 2 shifts without having any changeover. Then comes your footprint. Your footprint actually decides your battery compartment size. The smaller your battery compartment size is, the better you can utilize the space for other things in your design. Then lastly, it is a user point of view for the people who use the battery, who use the forklift, that it should be, the maintenance should be as low as possible. Now, when it comes to technologies for the batteries, it can be divided into 2 types. One is lead acid battery, and the other one is non-lead acid battery. For lead acid batteries, you can use a flooded lead acid battery, which comes in tubular design as well as a flat plate type design. Then there are valve regulated lead acid batteries. They come in gel form, that is, the electrolyte is gel, and there are also AGM forms, that is, there is an adhesive glass mat which absorbs the acid. And then there are advanced lead acid batteries. For the non-lead acid batteries, the biggest forerunner is, for now, it's lithium ion, and then there are fuel cells as well. Now, for the conventional vented lead acid battery, that is the flooded type, there are basically 2 designs. One is tubular, the other one is flat. Now, flat plate didn't have any technological advancements, but tubular has basically three types of positives. One is a dry field positive, one is a filtration or a slurry field positive, and the third one is a paste or extruded field positive. Now, the cycle life of the batteries depend on basically the manufacturing process of this particular plates. So, can you go on to the next slide, please? Here, you can see the basic advantages between flat pasted positive and a tubular positive. For example, a flat pasted positive having a high surface area, it can provide a very high rate of discharge when compared to a tubular battery. It also provides you with a higher utilization of your active material, and because it has a high surface area, it also has a higher rechargeability. But if you look at the negatives, a flat plate have a very slow cycle life when compared to a tubular battery, because it has a major problem of active material shedding. The active material shedding coupled with self-discharge of flat positives are generally not suitable for a high temperature operation. Now, in India, for motive power applications, there are 2 major dimensional standards that are followed for traction batteries. One is BS, the British standard, and the other one is the DIN standard. Now, for DIN standard in India, there are 2 different types of cells that are used. One is the welded type, where the terminals are welded to each other, and the other one is the bolted terminal type. The bolted terminals, you have basically bolts. You connect each cell with a connector, with a copper connector or a flexible connector. Now, for BS range, the usual ampere hour range for batteries is from 84 ampere hour to 1404 ampere hour. And for the DIN range, it's 120 ampere hour to 1550 ampere hour batteries. Now, the system voltage will depend on your particular lift truck type. For example, for all the attendees who are in the purchase department and who wants to identify a particular cell type or a battery type and how to choose them, from your catalogs, the batteries are generally have follow a particular nomenclature. For example, if you look at your left-hand top, that has a nomenclature 2IPZQ. So basically, the first number is positive is inside that. Then if you look at PZP, there are two types. It's either PZP or it's PZS. So PZP is basically that the battery is adhering to the BS standard of dimensions, and PZS is that it is adhering to the DIN standard of dimensions.
Right.
And the last, that is the 150 and the 250 that you see, is basically the rated ampere hour of the battery at C5. Now these BS and DIN standard batteries, they follow different plate. They have their ampere hour ratings based on the combinations of different plate types. Now these plate types, their ampere hour ratings, it varies from 24 ampere hour all the way up to 155 ampere. So the batteries are designed basically by combination of these plate types. Now, if you look at your battery, basically for your traction or motive power batteries, for your lift truck batteries, they basically come assembled inside a steel tray. Now, the battery having the electrolyte of as a sulfuric acid that is highly corrosive to your steel tray, which will actually reduce your tray life and thus your battery life. So there are two types of coatings available for your steel trays. One is the powder coating, and the other one is the epoxy coating. You can see all the different characteristics of each coating, and based on your own requirement, you can actually select your coating type for a battery.
Right.
Now there are certain add-ons which are provided with the traction battery, which enhances life, which enhances ease of maintenance. For example, if you look at the automated watering system, it actually reduces your human error while you are refilling your battery, while you are refilling your cell. It addresses your spillage issues, like if you are overfilling the battery, it does not allow you to overfill the battery because it has a stopper.
Okay.
So, and it always maintains the electrolyte level to the highest point. That is, you cannot overfill, basically. Now, there is another thing that comes with the battery, that is the electrolyte level sensor. We call it a blink. Basically, it blinks while you have ample electrolyte in your cells. And as soon as your electrolyte level falls to below the recommended mark, it stops blinking. So it can tell the user that I need refilling right now. So it is basically installed in a pilot cell inside your battery, which would actually help the end user, which will actually notify the end user whether the battery needs refilling. And then there are battery monitoring systems which provide you with the charge, discharge, and every data of the battery that the battery throughout its lifetime, so that you can actually manage your battery data, basically.
Okay.
Then there is another theory that comes in. This is an air agitation system. An air agitation system is basically all the cells have a hollow tube running through them. So basically what happens is while your battery is getting charged, air is pumped inside your electrolyte. It helps agitate your electrolyte and reduce the stratification. Now, as you are reducing the stratification, your rechargeability goes up. Your battery gets recharged faster, it can absorb higher currents. So this is another thing that is usually provided on demand with a traction battery.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to the charging of a traction battery, there are basically three types of charging. One is your conventional charging, that you put the battery on charge at the end of the day or after your shift. That usually happens from 10 to 20% current, and the charging time usually takes from 6 to 12 hours. Then there comes opportunity charging. Suppose you want to increase your shift by a little bit, say for 2 hours or so. So while your forklift is during the shift, while your forklift or your material handling equipment has a downtime, you can actually go and recharge your particular battery at that point of time. So, and for the opportunity charging with cells which do not have air agitation, you can go with a maximum of 20% current. And for cells which have air agitation, you can go up by 25-30%. Now, there is another concept which is there actually in the industry. We get a lot of inquiries about this, that is the fast charging. Basically, a fast charging of a lead acid battery, it is basically the charging rates, the amperes that is put into, it's more than 40%, and the average charge time is very low. But if you look
Okay.
into it, we retrospect on it, it actually could hamper your battery.
Right. Right. So thanks so much, Mr. Sarkar. I think following from user and manufacturer expectations, you have given us a very broad overview on the different types of batteries and the improvement system, productivity enhancement systems. But I think a very important component of this whole ecosystem is chargers. Okay. So now I would like to go across to Mr. Krishnan, and having a history of supplying chargers since 1986, we would just like to understand that how chargers have evolved and what are the different types and current trends, just to get an understanding for the audience that what is it that they can look at when they think about chargers. Mr. Krishnan.
Thanks, Abhishek. Thank you very much. Okay. So if you see in the first slide, I decided I'll start off with the history of forklifts. So you can see the first forklift was made in the world in 1917. And now if you look at 2020, considerable improvement has taken place in the forklift industry. And since all of you are users, I definitely don't think you want to go back to 1917. Okay. So
Yeah, certainly not.
similarly, I've done something on chargers. Okay. So this was the earliest kind of chargers that have been used. These are using diodes. They are timer based chargers. They follow something called a taper. They are very rugged chargers. Okay. I know in places even for 40 years, they're still working. They may not be very efficient, but you know, a lot of old time users prefer this and they keep saying, मेरे को कुछ problem नहीं होता है इसके ऊपर. Okay. And then there was the next one. This was actually developed by chloride batteries in the UK. These are called self-compensating diode chargers. And the main advantage with these chargers was that they cut off when it was 100% charged. They followed something that in the industry is known as dV by dt termination. Okay. And they compensated for AC power voltage. They did all kinds of things. It was really, at that time, a really amazing charger. This was the charger we decided to, you know, replace in India in the 80s, early 90s. The next thing that happened, you know, much later was SCR-based chargers. The advantage with these chargers was, compared to diode-based chargers, you could actually control the current and be able to control what is the amount of current that flows into your battery. You could also control that there is no inrush of current, because inrush of current, what it does to the battery plates, it you know, kind of hits the plates and it starts shedding active material, which doesn't happen with these kind of chargers. The next progress that has happened already in the world is high frequency chargers, amazing chargers, very, very high efficiency chargers. They are very power efficient, tremendously sophisticated electronics. Okay. The next step that is coming on now is a concept that is stackable chargers, which is, this has been in the telecom industry for quite some time, but it's slowly getting its way into the traction industry, where you have a master charger, you have many slaves. The real advantage here is, even if one of the modules fail, your battery is still getting charged, which is what a lot of users do. And if they want, they have a spare module with them, they can replace it pretty quickly. Hot swapping is possible. And your charger will, your battery will get charged, and your forklift will continue running. Okay. Because most users are interested in only one thing. They don't want to know much about charger. They don't want to know much about batteries. Mera gaadi chalna chahiye. You know, that is their mantra at all times. Okay.
That's right.
And another thing which Mr. Sarkar already mentioned is already there in use in many, many parts of the world. Not yet very popular in India. Okay. Which are fast chargers. They can recharge a battery from 20% to 80% in about 2.5 to 3.5 hours. As Mr. Sarkar said, there's still a lot of debate on this stuff. Okay, so I won't go there. All right. Okay.
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 So thanks,
Thank
Mr. Krishnan. I think you have given a broad overview of chargers, and I would like to take this ahead to Mr. Shivalkar. That we often see that due to human error or lack of proper maintenance practices, it leads to reduction in battery life. So, how do you think can a smart charger reduce this human intervention and increase battery life, Mr. Shivalkar?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Krishnan. Actually, they have elaborated a journey of battery charger, which was, I can say, quite it was ignored. Nowadays, people are more thinking on battery charging, output of that. So, as Mr. Krishnan shows that high frequency charger, which is a new generation charger, this came after the 90s. Research has done on that, and basically in Europe, many companies has done a research. High frequency charging, there are different type of a new charging profile has been adapted. So in high frequency charging, there is one charging profile called resistance based charging. So that I will be typically I will be explaining you how it will be helped. So as you said about the lack of there are the human errors which can be fatal for the batteries, which cannot the batteries then they are not performing. Considering the basic thing, why the battery is not performing because of the human error is basically is that when the battery get discharged on the vehicle, typically there should be at least 1 to 2 hours the battery should be keep idly to cool down. But because of the work pressure at the operator level, they never do this practice and they immediately connect the battery to the charger. At that particular moment, the temperature of the battery is quite high. While it is immediately after the discharge. So this high temperature, as per the electrical phenomenon, when the temperature is high, temperature is equally proportional to the resistance. So that resistance is the parameter where you can understand what is the inner temperature of the battery. And the temperature is the only thing, the temperature is the only thing in the battery which get the battery life reduced. That's the biggest criteria. If you maintain the battery temperature while charging and after the discharging, your battery will definitely give you the better life than what people are normally getting in the routine. So this is what the challenge is battery temperature, which is normally 10 degrees Celsius high while charging. What's the solution? As I said, as a new technologies in high frequency, a particular characteristic called resistance charging. That resistance charging, if you do the charging that way, what the charging will do, initially for 5 to 10 minutes, when you connect the charger to the battery, charger will diagnose the battery inner condition, battery age, then battery temperature and battery state of charge. Both the things after it will calculate the resistance, and if the initial temperature is high, the current flow which is required to put feed into the battery, that will be slow. It will go gradually increasing when the battery temperature will be at the minimum level, means the resistance is at the minimum level, then only the input current to the battery will increase. Accordingly, in this entire process, charger is not giving excessive current to the battery, so the temperature will again increase while charging. So this whatever the 10 degrees Celsius charging temperature is going to increase in the battery while charging, that will get reduced and 4 to 5 degree will be come down, and that will give the at least 10 to 15% of battery life enhancement. Second, human error you can say. So this is what I said, the RI charging. So you can see the in the graph red line, which is the current line. So you can see the current is gradually increasing, and when it goes on the peak, basically that time the battery is cooled down, so the battery is ready to take the more current. Second human error is auto equalizing. With the temperature, the second aspect which is very important is the auto equalizing. If customer is ignoring the auto equalizing, then again there is a problem in the battery extended life, long life. So in this particular charging profile, the equalizing had made automatic. Once the battery get 100% charge, the charger will automatically switch to the equalizing and it will complete the equalizing phase. then you can say that with the equalizing, all the cells will be equalized charge, and that will always give the better life for the battery. And third important aspect is, as a user, in a metal handling user, this nowadays intralogistic industry is a very much, they are on very pressure on to do day-to-day activities to perform. So they have many times the peak period, sometimes they don't have the much load. So they should get their comfort to charge the battery as per their time requirement. So with this particular smart charging aspect, customer have a liberty to select the charging time for 5 to 6 hours or 7 to 8 hours as per his operation. Second aspect come in the picture as an error. Many times what happens, customer is having the fleet of 24 volt, 48 volt and 80 volt charging system. Many times it's happened that the wrong battery, the wrong charger can be get connected. So there should be some system is required. So the user who is not maybe knowledgeable much on that, he should not worried on that. So the battery charger should take care. Once the battery is connected to the charger should understand which voltage system has come to him for the charging, and accordingly, automatically he should switch to that charging. So if for the 80 volt charging system charger, if 48 volt battery is being connected, it will automatically adjust his charging curve so that this 80 volt charger can charge the 48 volt battery charging system. So this is what the human error we can solve with this kind of a smart charging processes. So these are continuously the R&D is going with the various companies, and I'm hopeful that in the next some year where the lithium ion battery also we are talking, the charging process will improve and customer will get more satisfaction on the part of users of the batteries and chargers.
So thank you so much, Mr. Shevalkar. I think you have given a very good overview on the smart charger and how they can eliminate errors due to human interventions. So I would like to now invite Dr. Rashi to share her views on the developments in the lithium-ion battery range, especially in the MHE domain. See, lithium-ion has been a very high talking point since definitely last 2 to 3 years. So as a technology, I understand this has been with us for a long time. But in MHE domain, it has been like since the last 2-3 years, people have been talking about this. So with you being an expert in this field, we would like to get your views on this topic, especially in perspective of MHE domain. Yeah, Dr. Rashi.
Sure, thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible.
All right. Yeah, so I just quickly begin with showing what the specific energies of each one of the types of batteries are. So today what we are going to talk for another 5 minutes is over here where we are talking about lithium ion specifically. So moving ahead, we can classify them based on the cathodes, electrolytes, and based on the anodes. So something which is very efficient and would be most recommended based on the cathode would be a lithium ferrophosphate for the material handling equipments. So the general chemistries that are available in India are 3 types, that is lithium ferrophosphate, lithium titanate, and nickel manganese cobalt. And each one of them has their own specific plus points and minus points based on which you can actually classify which one should be used for your application. Like for example, lithium ferrophosphate is a balance between NMC and LTO, which actually gives you the best of the both worlds and is very economic to actually use in material handling equipments for Indian environments. So these are the voltages and energy densities. Probably we can move fast on that. Now let's come to what are the advantages. Basically, since you have a higher energy density and a specific energy, you actually can make it very compact and you can have a lightweight system. Higher efficiencies, you can actually, is there a problem?
No, it's okay. Please carry on. I'm able
Fine, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Okay, so the efficiency is very high. So you can get almost an 80% depth of discharge, or you can even go to 90% if required under emergencies. High power, long life, you can get something like 4,000 to 8,000 cycles in a battery pack at an 80% DOD. Extremely low maintenance and completely pollution free are some advantages. Now the plus is The plus is that you can do a very quick fast charge with all of these lithium chemistries. That is an advantage. So now let's move to the most critical part. A lithium battery consists of two parts. One is the cells per se, the pack, and the other one is the BMS, the battery management system. Now the battery management system is very important because it is protecting the battery to be within the safe operating area. So it would calculate the state of charge, communication between the battery data and your controllers of the MHE as well as the chargers. And it could use many different type of communication protocols like CAN bus, Modbus, and to communicate with the neighboring equipment, either the source or the load. So now some parameters that generally the BMS reads are the voltage or the current, temperature, and the environmental conditions, state of charge, state of health. And you can configure them with the BMS or the charge discharge limits, and the battery should operate within the specified safety limits. So the BMS is supposed to take care of this. Now there are two types of aspects of this as well, further moving, that is balancing. Now lithium cells need balancing, so there are two types of it in the balancing functions. So BMS is also first supposed to do the balancing. It is supposed to isolate the battery in case of any emergency of an overcharge, discharge, overcurrent, or crash, or a cell failure. It could record the battery usage. Some options are available: battery cycles and battery balancing. Now let's come to balancing, which is very important to get the maximum juice out of your battery. Now there are two types of it. One is an active, one is a passive. So I would quickly run you through a video wherein you can understand what is an active and difference between a passive balancing.
Okay, okay.
Now, generally, the cells are of different individual nature in a battery pack, no matter how much you match them together. So there is slight variation always, and this really impacts the life cycles of the battery, the efficiency of the battery as well. Now, as you can see here, the weak cell got full faster. The other cell has not charged completely. And your battery would disconnect saying that it's already full charge. Now see what happens in discharging. So here you never got your full capacity of the battery. Despite some energy was remaining, you could not use it.
Right.
Now let's see how active balancing helps into the batteries, in specifically lithium batteries. So what you can see here is that the energy from the charge cell was transferred to the lower charge cell, and now both of them are full. So you've actually charged your entire battery pack completely.
Right.
Here the energy from one of the cells is transferred to the other one. So you can see that again this process happens. So you have a balance between the cells, and actually the entire battery pack is used. So this helps. Now what is more important is how you have to store your batteries. You have to store them in a cool, dry, ventilated area. Do not expose them to direct sunlight for a long period of time. Elevated temperatures can result shortening of life and degrade performance. You could disconnect your battery packs from the MHE if you're not using them for 3 months, basically. Why 3 months is because the lithium batteries have very low self-discharge. So based on that, you can actually keep them for 3 to 4 months in the vehicle. Even if they're not in use, they would not completely discharge, and you can still use them further. Now, what you also can get from a very smart and intelligent battery pack is that you can do a preventive and a predictive monitoring of the battery pack beforehand, so that you can do a fault analysis, and which will save your time, making maintenance more easier. And this preventive monitoring increases the reliability of your material handling equipment.
Okay.
Now, some important first aid measures, because this is not like your conventional batteries. There's not, these are completely like the LFP ones that I'm talking about are completely non-flammable, non-explosive. Still, if something happens, you should contact a physician and not try to open the battery by yourself to avoid any kind of chemical burns, and try going into a fresh breathing area where it is possible with a lot of fresh air, and rinse with plenty of water. These are some important things. And now the most important aspect for every one of us is that why should we adapt to these new technologies that are coming? I mean, we have been using this for way long time now. Thing is that with active balancing and a fast charging, you can do an opportunity charging. You can charge your batteries in 20 minutes and to 1 hour, up to 1 hour, and you can be on the go immediately. So that improves your handling time in your warehouses or your factories where you're using them. Preventive monitoring will give you a hands-on and a heads up that when you have to schedule your next maintenance and what you have to do next, completely being non-explosive, non-flammable, non-polluting, helps you to helps your environment aspect, as well as helps the health and the environment issues impact. Now, how do you maximize your ROI is simple, because we all want to save on the money. We all want to understand that we need to get more and more out of that equipment that we are using. So you can use actually a smaller battery capacity as compared to what you're using conventionally, and do more trips in the same amount of time, that and you do a fast charging with these batteries without actually compromising on the life of the battery. So this is how you can change and have an impact on your ROIs and bottom lines, and actually get more out of the same kind of equipment. With this, I will just hand it back to you, Abhishek ji. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rashi. You have given a very good perspective on lithium batteries, and this active balancing is really a very, very interesting concept. I think now that we have heard from everybody, we have heard from Mr. Sarkar about different types of batteries, different types of cells. We have heard from Mr. Krishnan about evolution of chargers. We have heard from Mr. Shivalkar about smart chargers, and of course from Dr. Rashi about lithium-ion batteries and the concepts associated with them. I would like to go back to Mr. Mane and ask him something which has been asked to us in our previous webinars as well from our audience and the user community, that what are the daily checks and maintenance tips that we generally give to our MHE users to get the best out of their batteries, and do we face any challenges in real life situation?
Yeah, Abhishek, we have covered this in the last webinar, and we are told that what are the golden rules that to be followed on the batteries. But definitely, we are talking about a technology which is currently being used, that is a lead-acid battery. A lot of other technologies which are coming, like Dr. Rashi said about a lithium-ion battery, that will have a different set of maintenance requirement and all those things. Definitely lithium-ion batteries are coming with a maintenance-free guarantee. Lead-acid battery required to have a maintenance and required to have a daily checks. And those daily checks are to be followed by every user, that while before going for the charging of the battery, he has to see whether the battery tops are clean, battery electrolyte level is good. He has to see that the battery, while he is storing the battery has to be charged. Never store the discharged batteries, maintain electrolyte level, I said. Equalizing, what Anand was telling about, that equalizing is a very important part, and most of the time this equalizing gets is not being done on the battery, and wherein there are smart chargers which are coming in as a equalizing to do the equalizing of the cells. And in the lithium-ion battery, the active BMS is doing all those things, but in lead-acid battery, it has to be managed by manually. Then there are certain things where the need of the battery power or the energy to fulfill the two shift operations and complete one shift of the two shift operation, it required to have an opportunity charging. And that opportunity charging has to be done very carefully. As Mr. Sirkar said that this is under development, batteries are developing, chargers are under development. Charging a battery, lead acid battery at a faster rate is a very crucial. So it has to be done by a very good charger. So opportunity charging is a very important where the people have to look into very seriously and go ahead on the using batteries.
Okay. So I think, Mr. Mane, you have raised a very important point, and this is something the user community is always talking about. And in a real life scenario, we cannot get away from this fact of opportunity charging, especially when there are peaks, when there are a lot of work pressure. So many times these golden rules that we talk about, they not very consciously, but very unconsciously, they are overlooked, and people are not realizing the impact that they are having on the battery. So I would like to get a view from like almost all panel members on this, like one at a time, like starting with Mr. Sarkar, that what are the actual views about opportunity charging? I mean, does opportunity charging really reduce the life of a battery? Is it a fact or is it a myth? There's a lot of different concepts that float around this topic. So can you throw some light on opportunity charging, Mr. Sarkar?
Yes, definitely. Well, first, let's look at the types of chargers. Well, Mr. Krishnan, I mean, Kichu has already mentioned all the types of chargers, so I won't bother you with going over this particular slide again. Now, moving on to the next slide, for opportunity charging of lead acid batteries, one thing you have to keep in mind is that unlike lithium-ion batteries or other types, short periods of opportunity charging is not going to do you any good. So basically, when you are opportunity charging a lead acid battery, at least go in for a half an hour or 1 hour opportunity charge, so that you actually can get some benefit from the opportunity charge. Now, coming to the lead acid chemistry, when you are opportunity charging the battery, it will always depend on the state of charge level of this. Charge your battery is when it is at maybe like 60 to 70% SOC, that is state of charge. That is the best time that the battery has the lowest resistance. It has the lowest resistance at that point of time, so it can accept a higher ampere input.
Right.
Now, if you are using opportunity charging with your regular chargers, that is also fine. Now, if you are using a typical 8-hour chargers, for you can see in the table given below what approximate how much charge you'll be actually getting back for 1 hour of usage. Now, for different types of chargers which charges your battery at higher amps, say like 25-30% current. For those types, you would actually require an air agitation system to go along with your cells. The cells has to be designed differently so that the battery is able to accept that high amount of charge. Now, as to your question, whether it reduces the battery life or not, well, if you look at the battery life from the number of years of service point of view, regular opportunity charging, like everyday opportunity charging might do some harm to your battery. But if you look at the total energy throughput of your battery, it will remain the same.
Okay. So, so if I hear you correctly, what you are saying is that doing it once in a while is not really going to have a big impact. But if you do it like a regular practice, then certainly it may have some impact on the overall life of the battery.
Yes, if you are considering life as number of years, yes.
Right. Got it. I mean, very clearly explained, Mr. Sarkar. Thank you. So I would just like to get a quick comment from Mr. Shevalkar before I go to Mr. Krishnan about this concept of opportunity charging, and does smart charger in some way address this need? I may call it a need of some operations that whether they like it or not, they are forced to do opportunity charging.
Yes, basically, when we say the opportunity charging, as I said, the current scenario of intralogistic industry, their requirement is changing now. You can see the this pandemic of COVID now, the more dependency on the e-commerce companies. So at this moment, there are all the warehouses on the peak, and they don't have much time of 8 hours to 7 hours to charge the battery. So it is very common that they will go for the opportunity charging. So as I said, there is the solution with the high frequency charging, where I said that adapted as the RI charging. So customer have a chance to select the charging.
Excuse me. I'm really sorry to interrupt. One second. We are experiencing a slight technical glitch. Can we just take a 2 minutes break, a short 2 minute
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
break? And also, Mr. Anand, your microphone is not clear. Can you please adjust that? Yes, we can start now.
Yeah. So as I said, there is a changing requirement by customers that don't have much time. So as a C5 rating battery, at a C5 rating battery, it's a 20% of the rated capacity. We really can avoid opportunity charging by selecting the time as per the customer requirement. And if we allow him to charge the battery within 5 to 6 hours, that's the maximum period. So that we can do with the normal charging. So here
Okay.
we need to educate the customer that you can do it, but not with the opportunity charging. Use the advanced version of charging characteristics. That is quite possible for the user purpose.
Right. So thank you, Mr. Sarkar. Now I would just like to invite Mr. Krishnan to talk about, see, when we are talking about charging, opportunity charging, different types of practices that are going on, I would just like to get an overview on what is it that are considerations in setting up a charging station, and what are the key charging practices that you would recommend as an expert in this field, Mr. Krishnan.
Sure. I'd just love to do that. Okay. And, you can just put all the slides together. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that we've observed in charging stations is that a lot of the times it's not given the attention that it needs unless there are large fleet companies. In smaller companies, they just put it in some corner, not look for adequate ventilation. Another thing we've observed, because of the high temperatures in summer in India, in summertime, very useful to keep some fans so that you're cooling both the battery as well as the charger, both, not only the charger alone, so that both these together will enhance the life of charger and battery as a combination. And I have seen with my own two eyes, people have kept 5 single phase chargers, one on top of the other. Okay. Now, the topmost charger on that, you can make kebabs on them if you want. It gets so hot because the heat keeps moving upwards.
Right.
So please keep it next to each other, and make sure there is enough ventilation. Another thing is DC cable length. Okay. End user sometimes is ready to extend it even to 5 meters and then starts complaining about both the battery and the charger. And, if your DC cable gets spoiled, please change it. I'm connecting this to the DC connector also. People are ready to spend 8 lakhs, 10 lakhs for a forklift and a charger and a battery together. But when it comes to a DC connector, they want to use the cheapest connector available. I just don't understand this philosophy about going cheap on this stuff. Okay. Finally, this is more of an electrical stuff. Mane will know more than I will. People just use regular MCBs, and the moment there is an inrush of current, it trips, and of course, charger guy gets blamed. Okay, so please use. Thanks, doctor. please use the appropriate, this thing. Okay, the MCB. All right. Go to the next slide, please. Or is there a next slide? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Couple of things in this 50 hertz charger should easily last you for 10-15 years. In fact, I've seen in some companies Westinghouse chargers that are 40 years old, still working perfectly well. Okay, they work. Okay,
Okay.
maintain. There is a maintenance schedule. The biggest problem seems to be implementation of the schedule. Blow dust out from the charger. Okay, make sure the ventilation free things are free. Sometimes I've gone into paint companies and carbon companies, and you can't see your charger, you can't see the PCB board, everything is black. I'm shocked how our chargers are still working. Okay, again, this is a repetition. Okay, there are the power devices like the diodes and SCRs. Tighten their terminals. Okay, check AC wires. Regularly check the terminals inside the charger. Okay, just put the charger off, take a socket and tighten them all. Okay, these are some of my ideas. I don't know if there's one more slide. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a lot of companies where they discharge it and discharge it and discharge it. Okay. And then they start charging the battery. This messes up the battery also because of the inrush of current that goes inside. Okay. Use chargers that have got an auto cutoff. That means when they are 100% charged, this will increase your battery life. Avoid using a charger continuously for more than 24 hours. Yes, chargers are rated, yet at the same time, spend a little more money on having more chargers. Okay. Battery terminals clean. I think somebody already mentioned this. It's sad sometimes when you see the quality of the battery terminals. Ensure battery electrolyte is maintained, and Sarkar already showed automatic filling systems using things like a Blinky, etc., etc., etc.
Okay.
Keep adequate spares for maintenance. Please do preventive maintenance than breakdown maintenance. Okay. Use chargers that are maintainable by people. Okay. We want to remember we are in India. Get the charger technicians trained by the charger company. Okay. And I've also seen that the manual is sometimes with the purchase people. The manual rarely reaches the operator and the maintenance technician. Okay.
Right.
So when we are doing troubleshooting, you tell the maintenance guy, manual kahan hai? Sab wo to andar hai, office ke andar.
Right.
And use chargers that can handle high AC variation spikes, especially in industrial environments. Floor cleaning, etc. That's all right. You are in good environments, but in industrial environments, make sure that you use chargers that can handle this. This is my 2 bits worth on this. Okay.
So thank you so much. And at this time, I would request all the audience to start posting their questions on the chat box. And shortly there would be a feedback link which would be getting posted on the chat box to use that to give valuable feedback to all of us.
Sure.
Now, moving on. So moving on, thank you, Mr. Krishnan, for that detailed on how to better use the chargers and how to set up charging station. I would just like to get a quick comment from Dr. Rashi as far as chargers are concerned. So we heard that opportunity charging is something which is actually easy to be done on lithium-ion batteries. Rather, it is recommended. But are there any key pointers for charging a lithium-ion battery? Like we just went through pointers for lead-acid battery charging. So some quick comments on that.
Sure. Adding on to whatever Krishnanji said, I mean, taking all of that and now adding for lithium is that you should have a compatible charger is the first point. Second point is that if you have a communication-based charger, because most of the lithium batteries come with a communication and the controllers on the MHE also need communication. So if you have communication-based chargers, it's a fantastic thing. because then the battery automatically communicates on at what C rate it wants to get charged and at what C rate it wants to get discharged. And then you can do a fast charging if your charger is capable to deliver that many amps of current. You can do a fast charging within 20 minutes to 1 hour based on what is your charger capability. So definitely opportunity charging can be done, and you do not compromise too much on the cycle life. Second thing is, since these batteries are generally rated 1C and above, you can have, or maybe 0.5C and above. So what you have is you can do a fast charge very quickly, and you can get back on track fast. That helps.
Oh, great, interesting. So we would like to get a comment from Dr. Mr. Shevalkar about the RI technology increasing the life of the battery. So you spoke about that very interesting concept. We would just like to understand that a bit. How does it increase the life of the battery? If you could just help us in that.
Yeah, can I have that? PPT. So as I said, it's a characteristics comes under the high frequency, typically based on the resistance. To calculate the resistance from the battery, understand the resistance, and accordingly charge the battery. So we will put that much current only into the battery, which the battery can convert into the charge. So with this, all this process, we are reducing the heat generation in the battery while charging. So what that will be in benefit to customer, it will reduce the heat and it will automatically improve the battery life. Typically, if I say, if the battery cycle, standard battery life cycle is 1300 cycle. Now, with the practices or human error, you can say, they are not getting 1300 cycle, they're getting, let's say 900 or 1000 cycle. Adopting this kind of a characteristics for the improvisation, they can go to actually 1300 cycle. So that is a benefit, at least for 1 year, they can improve the battery life. Their cost will get reduced to buy a new battery.
Okay.
The second aspect in RI charging, or you can say the smart charging, important thing, I guess I will add this here with the communication. Dr. Rashi rightly said, the charger and battery communication is very important. If it is in lithium ion, why can't it is in lead acid battery?
Acid, correct. Yeah.
So a charger should understand the battery current condition and they should replica while charging the battery. And whatever we are understanding there, the charger will understand. That should be somewhere monitored, documented and monitored. So that monitoring system also available with some of the charger where a data logger has been maintained inside, and this data logger continuously recording the data, current, voltage, time of charging required, how much the battery has get charged, when the charging has started, when the charging has been closed, what was the charging period, what was the equalizing period, what was the error has come while charging, the definition of that error. So these all the data can be useful for training purpose and troubleshooting purpose. So that is our, as an industry expert, that is our duty to educate the customer. So as Mr. Krishnan said, there are many practices already there in India. So cheap kind of connectors they are using, or they are ignoring the things because of the daily pressure. But that is very important. When you buy a costliest product and you are ignoring the maintenance and you are not aware of the practices, so you are losing your money there. So that is very important. So this is only the forum where we can say in day-to-day activity it is not possible. So this is very important. With all this, if anybody asks us what is the benefit to doing this, so I can say that there is the ROI to doing all this maintenance and all this data recording and all this. You can see the saving in the terms of energy, kilowatt energy in the cost, then battery life improvement, CO2 emission you can reduce. So that all you can consider as a saving there. And if anybody asks, we can as an expert can tell them that what is exactly the figures there. So they can get the interest and they will follow the procedures further. So this is what.
Right. Great. So I think looking at the time, we'll have to open the forum for customer Q&A also. But before we do that, This is a very pertinent question that we've received in the last segment from 2-3 participants, and I would like to invite answers from both Mr. Sarkar and Dr. Rashi, is about disposal of batteries after useful life. So, Mr. Sarkar, would you like to go first about what are the statutory guidelines? What is it that users should be aware of as far as disposal is concerned?
Yep, sure. See, for lead acid batteries, the major two important components are lead and sulfuric acid. They're both deemed hazardous by our government and all governments, in fact.
Right.
So when your battery has reached its end of life, the general suggestion is there are government authorized smelting units and recycling units for lead acid batteries. The batteries should essentially be handed over to them, because they maintain the proper procedure for disposal or recycling of the lead acid batteries. And for lithium ion, I would suggest Dr. Rashi would be a far better person to answer.
Absolutely.
For lithium
Yeah,
ion, you can
Rashi.
actually recycle 99% of whatever you have in the lithium ion battery. It's completely environmentally safe. There are new standards which are being written for recycling of these batteries, and there are facilities existent in India who are doing the recycling of these batteries. So there is absolutely no need to worry that what would happen if at the end of the life. Provisions are there for the end of the life.
Great. I think that gives a very comprehensive answer to this query. And I think this is a very logical conclusion to this very insightful session that we have had so far. Before we just open up the questions from audience. So we started from getting user and manufacturer expectations. Then we sort of understood the various technologies in batteries and chargers. We understood about do's and don'ts. And finally, we try to conclude with the end of life treatment of these batteries specifically. So now there are many questions which have come in, but maybe due to paucity of time, we may have the opportunity to take only a few and maybe get back to the other respondents separately. So one of the first questions that has come in is a very interesting question, and I would like, I think between Mr. Mane and Dr. Rashi, if both of you can collaborate to answer this question, that how does the counterweight aspect get taken care of when lithium-ion battery is the selected option for a MHE? So, I mean, you can choose.
So, as a manufacturer of equipment, I think we should be, or I should be answerable for this. Yeah, Dr. Rashi can help me in that, but definitely I can say that whatever weight of the battery, lithium-ion battery, we will be getting of maybe same rating or same kilowatt rating of a lead acid battery, the battery weight will be almost 1/4 or lesser than that. So because of this, we need to manage the weight on the equipment so that the counterbalancing can happen correctly. So what we are planning, or what the OEMs are doing, that they are adding a dead weight on the equipment, and the design and the electrical forklifts are designed across lithium-ion battery.
Okay.
By ensuring that the required counterbalance weight is there on the equipment to manage your weights, loads on the fork. And that is a very important aspect that is coming into a lithium-ion battery equipment design. If you are replacing a lead acid battery on an existing equipment and you are putting a lithium-ion battery on that, then you have to add a special weight on the equipment that will compensate the lead acid battery weight, and it will act as a balancing on the equipment.
Okay. So, Dr. Rashi, would you like to add anything to that? Are there any considerations which are going on in the designing of lithium batteries so that this fact of adding weight and all that is taken care of at a root level?
Of course, I mean, the designs can definitely be improved of the equipment to ensure that they can become more compact or maybe a little different in design. But then two aspects come into picture. One is that you can do a battery swap. That is one thing because it is lighter in weight. So if you don't have an option of opportunity charging, maybe at some locations, you can do a battery swap. That is one aspect possible. Second, what you can do in this is that since they are lighter, you can add the battery capacity. These are two options
Okay.
available generally, and
Okay.
of course, like what I agree to whatever Amol Maneji said, that it makes sense to put a dead weight. So I agree with those,
Okay.
and these are the two additional points.
Thanks so much. Now,
And
one, yeah,
Abhishek, I
sorry.
would like to add something more into that, because there are certain warehousing equipments in which counterbalancing is not required. Means power pallets and stackers in which counterbalancing is not required, and on that equipment we are taking an advantage of a lower weight of a battery, which will reduce the loading on the traction motors and the traction controllers. So that is the basic
Okay.
advantage for moving into a lithium-ion battery on these pedestrian equipments.
Okay. So let me tell you that we have a very attentive audience. They have just given us a follow-through question saying that what is the typical weight difference between a lead acid battery and a lithium ion battery? Typical, I mean, if we say a 48 volt, 400 ampere hour battery, if we say a lead acid versus a lithium ion, what would be the typical weight difference? I mean, for anybody who, I mean, either Dr. Rashi or Mr. Sarkar or Amol, just a quick sort of input
Yeah.
on that.
See, I will just start, and Mr. Sarkar and Dr. Rashi will help me in this. This generally 48 volt 400 Ah battery weighs about 800 kg, a 700 to 800 kg,
Okay.
and on the same ratings, lithium-ion battery can weigh about 200 or 250 kg.
Wow.
So the
There's
difference is
25%.
yeah. So the difference will be of about 650 kg that has to be added on the truck.
Okay. 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 Great. So the
So I
next
think
question
Dr.
that
Rashi can help me in specifying that what will be the battery lithium-ion battery weight if it is 48 volt 400 Ah.
You want an exact weight right now? Then just give me a
No,
minute,
no.
but continue with this. What I'm saying is that whatever he says makes sense. It's right. What happens is you can consider a 60 to 70% reduction in the weight when you're equating the same sizes. However, one thing that you also need to keep in mind that if your existing lead acid or a conventional battery is a 48-400, then typically by thumb rule, you would need something closer to 48-200 in case of equating the
right,
capacities of the battery. So those
right.
considerations are also very important to be
Absolutely.
considered.
Absolutely. Very rightly said. Now, 2, 3 respondents have spoken about fuel cell technology. Okay. Now, I would just like to get thoughts from any of the panel members. I mean, if anybody can throw some light on the development, whether it is getting popular, and if not, like what are the stumbling blocks? So some thoughts, maybe Mr. Sarkar, Mr. Krishnan, Dr. Ashish, Mr. Shevalkar, whoever. I mean, fuel cells, how do we answer that? People are asking about that, like why it's not gaining popularity as much as lithium ion is doing.
So, Mr. Krishnan, you
So
want
Mr.
to start?
Sarkar,
I don't mind. I mean,
yeah,
see, about 20 years ago, there was a lot of interest, and I was supporting one company in that part of it. And then everybody said hydrogen is a difficult gas, and you want to be able to control the production of hydrogen. But recently, what I've been reading is that they have managed to make hydrogen gas production less dangerous
okay,
than it was before, and hence the whole issue. The thoughts of having hydrogen filling stations, which will be much safer than what it was before. Okay, but I think it's an idea that is coming up, and as people in industry, we should be kind of getting ready for it. It might affect all our business otherwise. That's why.
okay.
That's all I have to say. I've
Yes.
not been following it for a long time, Abhishek. Okay, I think
Uh,
Sarkar might have some
Well,
more.
well,
yeah, Mr. Sarkar.
Just to add to Kichu, there have been developments in fuel cells. Like for example, I think there are about 2 or 3 different types of cars that are actually fueled by hydrogen powered fuel cells. So it still has a lot of time. It will still take a lot of time to evolve. But yes, people are definitely doing researches on it, and they are trying to improve the productivity, the production ability, or the feasibility of having fuel cells in your regular day-to-day uses.
Right. I think though we have answered the next question that we have come, but still there's a very specific question which has come. Can we use a common charger for lithium ion and lead acid battery? So, Mr.
I'm taking
Krishnan,
this
would
up.
you like to? Yeah, please, Dr.
I'm
Rashi.
taking this up. Krishnanji, let me take this up, please. This is a question that I get all the time from everybody, whether it is storage, it is EVs, or now it is MHE. Okay, everybody
Sure,
comes
sure.
with this. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, sir. I would take
Yeah.
that. See, you guys have to understand one thing, that the voltage ranges of a lead acid battery and a lithium battery is different. So if you have a configurable, that means you can configure the voltage and the current rating of your charger. You can use the same charger for lead acid and lithium. Now here there are
Okay.
two riders to this. Number one is, first is configuration of voltage and current. Second is the communication. Some batteries in lithium domain allow charging without communication, and they're okay with only a current and voltage control. Some do not allow this without a communication. So please read your manual that you get with your battery, and talk to your vendor from where you've got your batteries, whether you can use this or not. And always get the compatibility of the charger verified from the battery manufacturer for complete safety and hassle-free operations.
Oh,
Yeah, I have one cross question for this to Dr. Rashi. Means in the charging, how the BMS is helping you, means how the BMS is helping during charging of the battery. Means
Okay,
if the
now,
external charger is not having any communication, then whether BMS is playing that role.
yes, BMS plays a very, very critical role in your lithium batteries. Suppose if there is no communication, so what happens is in your charger, you're going to only set the voltages and the current. So you will set the high voltage, you will set a low voltage, and you will have some current rating on which the current will be pushed into the battery. Now,
Right.
if your BMS is intelligent enough, it will cut off, and there has to be a physical aid for disconnection between the battery and the charger, so that at any point of time, if there is a malfunction or there is a voltage breach or a current breach for that matter, the battery should get disconnected, and BMS does this function. Now, one more aspect, now I'll add on a little on active balancing here. If your charger is somewhere which your configuration and is non-communicative, so the active balancing will equalize each one of them, each one of the cells very quickly, so that you can get the maximum out of your charger without the communication on
okay.
lithium batteries.
So,
Okay,
I
so
think we have.
means when
Sorry.
just I need some more clarity. When the lithium-ion batteries are being charged, till 80% you can charge it with a maximum current, or we can put a 0.5 or 1C rating in the battery. But after 80% of the charge, it has to be charged slowly, or you are continuing after 80% also with the full charge.
No, the same CCCV method that you do, CVCC method, same way. No
Okay, so
change
it
in
will be
that.
a constant current and then constant voltage. So, Mr. Krishnan, you want to add something on this? You're not audible, sir.
You're on mute, sir.
I said, Dr. Rashi has said it all. Okay. In fact, she said more than what I would have liked to say. Thank you so much. Okay. Because
Okay.
we also get so many inquiries. Oh, I'm shifting to lithium. Can I use the same charger? And I just have to say NO, capitals, bold, 48 point kind of stuff. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So next question is come for Mr. Sarkar, where people, I mean, I always thought so that oppositely charging is something that is going to pick people's interest. So there again, like we are getting a question that will oppositely charging consume one life of battery, that if you do it once, though we have answered that you don't need to do it regularly. If you do it regularly, then only the life will be affected. But this is a specific question that with every opposite charge will I lose one cycle, and that is a thumb rule that has always been.
No.
not in the industry.
No, no.
Okay.
Using one cycle basically, because basically your battery energy throughput will remain constant. So it depends on how long you are charging it and how much
Okay.
energy you are taking out of it again.
Okay. Okay. So I think I have time for
Can
just
I
one
add
more.
something to that?
Abhishek,
Yeah, please,
yeah,
please,
yes.
Can I
Dr.
add something
Krishnan.
to that? See,
Yeah.
if you remember the slide, you saw that the first self-compensating charger was made by Chloride, by CMP in the UK, and they started selling charger and battery together as a package. And that
Okay.
1984 charger had opportunity charging.
Okay.
Okay, so if
Okay.
they had a doubt about serious impact on battery life, I don't think a company like CMP would have even
Release.
introduced that as a part. And then what Sarkar said, that your battery is 95% charged and you do opportunity charging, you're just messing around with the battery. But you're between 30 and 60, 65%. And you've got a BDI in your system, and you can actually see that, okay, this is the time in which I can do opportunity charging. Then, yeah, there will be reduction, but I don't think the number is that high. My perspective, okay? Yeah.
Yes.
I've not done any research or
Okay.
analysis like Excite would have done. Okay.
Right. Right. I think we have time for, we are already out of time, but maybe we'll take this one question, which is about having batteries used in freezer applications. So, like if a equipment is running in cold stores, so one of the guidelines that we as manufacturers give: don't park your equipment inside the cold store, definitely. Okay, but in terms of usage, can we say that they can run almost like 24/7 in a cold store, whether it is lead acid or lithium ion, in freezer conditioning -25 or so?
See, I'll just speak on lead acid point of view. If you are using a lead acid battery in a cold storage application, what basically happens is, if you are not protecting a battery, that means if your battery temperature itself is below zero. So what happens is, while you are discharging your battery, your actually electrolyte specific gravity, it comes down. Now, as your electrolyte specific gravity is coming down, what happens is your freezing point goes up. For example, for a 1280 gravity acid, the freezing point is -70 degree. Now, as the specific gravity goes down while you are discharging the battery, the freezing point will come up, say to -18 degree, -20 degree. Now, what will happen? What that does, it is essentially restricting your battery capacity at that point of time. So, for example, if you're using a 100 Ah battery, which is rated at say 27 degrees centigrade, for a cold storage application where the application is occurring at say -10 degree, you are essentially getting 70% of the battery capacity which you're supposed to get.
Is it? Okay.
Now, when it comes to life, say -5 degree, -10 degree, there is not a very big impact on life, but if you're operating continuously at say -20 degree, it will have lower cycle life as well. That is only for lead acid battery.
Okay. So,
I
Dr.
think
Rashi, any thoughts? Yeah,
so.
please.
I think Anandji has some points, so let him go first. Then
Yeah.
With this continuation of this battery to be used in the cold warehouse. Now, whatever we know that it's a anti-room is there where the typical temperature of 0 to 10 is maintained. That is what quite normal to charge it. But if it is there, like in Europe, this has happened, and this happens many times that they charge the battery in minus temperature also. So there is a typical protocol is required. When charging the batteries, you need to first warm the batteries. You need to take the batteries to that particular temperature level. Afterward, that battery can take the charge. Otherwise, battery cannot take the charge, and you cannot get the backup that way, which will utilize into the operations. So it is always been advised in in our country to be park the vehicle into the this anti-room area and warm the battery first and then charge the battery. So that will give the backup to the batteries in the
Right,
cold
because
area.
if you're going through an electrochemical point of view, basically when your electrolyte is frozen or is in a minus ambient temperature, what happens is its mobility is reduced. So basically, while you are charging the battery, your ionic movement is restricted. So you are not getting your efficiency while you are charging.
And this kind of a warming, as I said, this is possible nowadays with the temperature sensor. Like when the battery came out from the cold area, with the temperature sensor, we just need to identify the current temperature of the battery. Then we will put the extra energy to warm the battery. So that is, we can really make the battery possible to give the more backup to adapting some this kind of ways to charge the battery.
Okay. Okay.
So, Abhishek, before going to lithium-ion battery, I have one point on the lead acid battery to talk about. When OEMs are offering a truck for a freezer equipment, the freezing application, it is generally offered with a higher rating of the battery. The reason is that the operational cycle, what is expected from the equipment, is to be ensured that the battery is not discharged below 50%. Or 50% depth of discharge is managed, and whenever you are using in a freezing condition, it should not be discharged below 50% of the depth of discharge, or otherwise the freezing temperature of the electrolyte will increase and the electrolyte will get frozen, and that will affect your complete cycle of the electrolysis cycle, electrochemical cycle in the battery, and that can create a problem for a battery.
Absolutely true, Mr. Manu.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so Dr. Rashi, you can go ahead.
Yeah, coming to lithium-ion, 3 aspects here. Now, the first one is that if you use your normal lithium-ion batteries, they will operate up to -20 degrees with a slight thermal runaway, which means there will be slight reduction in the capacity that you get. Now, I am not talking here of oversizing the batteries 1:1. I mean, a regular forklift that you would take inside in a freezer with a regular battery. Point number 2 is that you, like Amol Maneji said, that you can oversize, number 1. Number 2, you can do a thermal management of these batteries because the BMS has temperature sensors already in it and it manages the temperature of the battery. So you can do a thermal management so the thermal management, you need not increase the size or the capacity of the battery. Say to maintain it at 50%, it is not required if you use it. And the third is a very special kind of lithium battery, which is available for a -30 degree operation, so -30 degree Celsius operation, which has a very special electrolyte in it. So these are the 3 aspects of lithium ion which you need to take care. So when you're designing your MHE for specifically freezer applications, you could do 2 things. One is, as you said, oversize. Now here you do not need to oversize 50%. You can oversize it 30 to 40%. So that's an additional saving there. Second is, if you do not want to oversize, with just a marginal increase in the price of the battery, what you can do is you can have a thermal management and a thermal jacketing done within the same casing so that the BMS and the battery cells both are completely protected of this harsh environment and they continue to deliver the 100% of what is expected out of them.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much. We are completely out of time. Rather, we have overshot our scheduled time by almost like 7 minutes now. So though there are many other questions, but in the interest of time of everybody, I don't think we can take any more questions. But anyways, it has been a very, very interesting and very insightful session. And I would like to thank all the esteemed panel members first to take their time out of their busy schedule to share their knowledge and plus to make it such an enriching session for all of us. Thank you so much. Looking forward to more such sessions in future. Thank you so much. With that, we will bring this event to a close.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank
very
all
much.
of you. It was real
Thank you,
fun
everyone.
being a part of this. Thank you.